Hey, beloved Madridistas, welcome back to Madrid. Welcome back to Madrid, to the channel. What an absolutely crazy night. First of all, what awful football. What an absolutely dismal performance. I do not know how this team survives. This is a team that at the moment is surviving just because we have very talented players and because this team has a winning DNA. But otherwise, the play is so poor. This is going to be a shorter video. We're going to go straight into takeaways and player comments. In my last video, I said that I was really worried about cold starts. Number one, we start every match really cold. Number two, that I was always very worried about set pieces and aerial play. I talked about our defensive transition, which is disastrous, and I talked about these moments where we sort of have lapses of concentration. Well, last night's match was just a shining example of all of those concerns. They all came to life. So, terrible performance, but we have a spot in the final. Who knew? Okay, let's discuss this match. I'll give you my thoughts on sort of the broad takeaways, and we'll talk about individual players. Thanks for joining me. As always, let's get started. Listas, welcome back. Okay, let's talk about last night's match, which was completely insane. We'll start with the lineup. Now, the lineup was unusual, but I wouldn't say terribly surprising. He had Lunin in goal, Lucas Vázquez on the right, Alaba and Asensio in the middle of defense, and Camavinga as left back. Now, that's not something we've seen very often. In the past, it's worked okay. Last night, it did not. This was disastrous. In the middle of the pitch, he had a sort of double pivot with Tchouaméni and Fede, Jude a little bit further forward. And then up front, we finally got to see Enrique. I've been dying to see this kid play. He needs to play more minutes. I think this kid has so much potential, but I was very, very happy to see him in the number 9 position. And then you had Vini on the left and Rodrigo on the right. Now, in terms of the match, rather than sort of go through a chronology, let's just jump straight into the sort of broader takeaways, because these things really have me concerned. Now, the first thing, and I'm going to mention it again, the slow starts. I mean, I don't know what is going on, and I know that they must have discussed this time and time again, but we start every match so slow. It's absolutely incredible. I don't know why we're conceding a huge amount of goals in those first 20 minutes. We tend to start matches losing. It almost feels like we have to take a goal in order to sort of wake up. This is a consistent problem this season, and it worries me tremendously, especially thinking about the match in North London coming up. That remains a serious problem. Number two, there was way too much distance between the lines. So there was too much distance between lines and between players. Now, it felt like we were just too dispersed, and the player that had the ball never really had any support short. Now, what makes a good football team is a team that can combine short play with sort of a threat of a longer pass. And if you can do both, it makes you very, very dangerous. We're just not able to do that because the players that have the ball feel very isolated. I never feel like there's any support nearby. And of course, if you don't have support nearby, it's very difficult to lift your head and think about the longer pass. We are not playing compact football. Our lines need to be much, much closer. It's just really worrisome. It's hard to put your finger on exactly what it is, but it's really, really obvious. Our players are far too isolated, and we lose the ball very quickly on the back of that. Okay, number 3. Our counters are totally disorganized. And last night, there were so many occasions where we would recover the ball right in front of our box. And at the moment that we steal the ball, we would manage to get the ball to the wing, but only 1 or 2 players would sprint forward. It happened over and over. And as the player was sprinting forward, you could see a massive lagoon just behind him. And then the other players were just trailing way far behind. So more often than not, you would get to the byline all the way at the end, but lift your head and there's nobody in the middle. There was nobody in support. This happened over and over and over. And this just feels to me like a coaching problem because the players need to have very strict instructions when to push forward and when not to. But I can't imagine that the instruction was just let the winger go forward and everybody just sit back and walk, slowly. I mean, we're not sprinting together It's really, really disconcerting, and because of this, we're not taking advantage of our speed, and we're so destabilizing on the wings, but it's pointless if the other players don't push up, if there's nobody in the middle to meet that ball. So this happened over and over, and it was just incredibly disconcerting. Okay, another thing I have to say, number 4 would be our defending is awful, not just in transition, but as a block. Now, in transition, it's just incredible how easy our opponents manage to get behind our defenders. It literally takes 1 or 2 passes, and they're already behind our defenders. Our transition defending is absolutely awful. Every time we lose the ball, I just, clench my teeth because we feel so vulnerable. That worries me tremendously. And then when we defend as a low block, I find we're too soft. So the other team is passing the ball around, we're defending in a block, but we're not really poking. And it takes us a really, really long time to get the ball back. So I think our defending is terrible, both in block and in defensive transition. Okay, number 5. What I mentioned just now, aerial balls and set pieces. The goal in the 93rd minute is a shining example of this. When that ball came in, there was absolutely nobody on the man that headed the ball. Nobody put pressure on him. Lunin needs to attack the ball aggressively. If you watch the replay, I don't know what he did in this play because he sort of half came out but didn't reach the ball. Well, you either stay under the sticks or you attack the ball, but not anything in the middle just will not work. That was, just a shining example of how poor we are at marking men in set pieces and aerial balls. Now, another thing that goal in the 93rd minute showed us, and this would be number 6, would be those lapses of concentration that I keep talking about. This is the second match in a row where the opposition scores almost immediately after we score. Now, this is just a matter of concentration. Last week, I think it was 30 seconds. We scored, and the other team scored, I think, 30 seconds. This time it was a little bit longer, but the message is the same. It's we have moments where we just lose concentration, and this is, again, becoming a pattern. Now, another example of losing your concentration, and this is absolutely criminal. That goal in the 93rd minute that I'm talking about, it was a header across from the right wing and a header. If you rewind that about 60 seconds earlier, the reason that goal took place, and it was a foul and a set piece, is because we had given up the ball just prior to that in the stupidest way possible. Now think about this. You're in the 93rd minute. You have 4 minutes left to play. You have a 1-goal advantage, and you're in possession. What is the last thing that you do? Lose the ball. So instead of holding onto the ball and playing short possessions and frustrating them and making them run and killing the clock, instead of doing that, which is what you're supposed to do, we tried a long ball. We tried a long ball to a forward and, of course, lost possession. And in that turnover of possession, it produced the Real Sociedad goal that took us into extra time. This is absolutely just unacceptable. This is common sense. If you're the only long ball you play in a situation like that is if you're 100% sure that it's going to succeed. But if there's any risk of losing possession, don't do it. You're 4 minutes away from winning the match. This is a lapse in concentration, a lapse in judgment, and it's another one of the problems that's really, really pissing me off this season. Okay, let's do players real quick. Lunin, okay, I thought Lunin was poor, okay? He had one really amazing save. It was a fantastic reflex save, but other than that, he drove me crazy. Taking the ball out and putting the ball into play was, first of all, he takes way too long. I don't know why he does this. He has this dramatic pause when he takes the ball out. That kind of irritates me. His decision-making in terms of putting the ball into play is terrible. He kept giving the ball to Tchouaméni, right in front of him, but Tchouaméni has a man right behind him. What do you think Tchouaméni is going to do? You pass him the ball, he's going to give it right back to you because he's being pressed. So it was just very poor judgment putting the ball into play. It was, very, very frustrating. I think in the play of the goal, I think he could have done a lot better. And thank God we didn't go into penalties because Lunin was not inspiring confidence last night. Okay, Lucas Vázquez was an unmitigated disaster, okay? I don't know. This is like match after match. This guy's getting eaten alive. I mean, this was such a dreadful evening. Both the left wing and right wing were terrible. Camavinga got eaten alive by Take Kubo, and Lucas Vázquez was just awful. And one thing I noticed last night a lot is that he would drift into the middle a lot. And so their left winger was constantly alone, completely wide open, because Lucas Vázquez would drift in the middle. And there were so many times we were commenting, among us going, what the hell is he doing playing center back? His man is completely wide open. I don't know what's going on with Lucas Vázquez. This was another dismal performance. I don't think his contract will be renewed, and don't be surprised if it isn't, because Trent Alexander-Arnold, when he comes, he's going to take that position. Carvajal will probably back him up when he returns from injury, but Lucas Vázquez, I just don't see him renewing. Okay, Camavinga, awful. This was just awful. Now, he has played left back before, and it's worked out in the past. It did not work out last night. This was an experiment gone terribly wrong. Take Kubo beat him in the one-on-ones every single time. I also find that when Camavinga recovered the ball, he would take too many risks deep in our own area, and it was just way too risky. I think he made us suffer unnecessarily on a few occasions. I think Camavinga had a terrible night. He's a player that I love, but he had a terrible night. And I thought he could play left back, but last night he showed his vulnerabilities. Terrible performance. Okay, David Alaba, a disaster. Okay, this was probably one of the worst matches I've ever seen Alaba play. In addition to the 2 semi-own goals or deflections, he just had a terrible night marking. He was just in the air, on the ground. He was just a liability, and I don't know. He clearly is not in great shape. He's not the Alaba he used to be, and he's going to need more time to get back up to speed. Terrible performance. Okay, Asensio is probably the only defender that I think did okay, and I'll forgive him because I think he did okay. One thing that he defended well as usual. He's aggressive and physical. In my previous video, I mentioned that he's now starting to carry the ball a lot more, making runs up the middle. It's a facet of his play that we hadn't seen until the prior match, and I made a note of that. He showed it to us again last night, and he had a few runs up the middle, which can be very dangerous when they're not expected. The only thing is that he makes a mistake once he gets to the final third. His decision-making, releasing the ball, still has to improve. But that's an aspect of his game that I think could be very valuable. But I think Asensio was the only defender that I would, give any sort of a passing grade to last night. Oh, okay, Tchouaméni I think was okay last night. He had a few crucial tackles. His timing going to ground was quite good. He stole plenty of balls. I think we had a few weak links. I don't think Tchouaméni was one of them last night. I think he played a decent match. Okay, Fede was solid, as always. A little bit quiet, maybe not as prominent as we've seen on other occasions, but he was consistent and solid and reliable, not just in the midfield, but at the end of the match when he played right back. I think it was also, very good. Fede, is never going to be the weak link. He's always a player that performs. I've never seen him play a bad game. So he was, I say, more quiet than usual, but I think he had a good match. Okay, Jude I thought was really good. Jude was really, really good. He had a few displays of technique that were just fantastic. The way he protects the ball, spins away from trouble, the way he can hold onto the ball to gain the right timing to make the pass. He's just such a wonderful player to watch. My uncle and I noticed in the last couple of matches that Jude looks physically different. When you see him on the pitch, he looks much more muscular. And we looked into it, and it turns out that he still has a lot of problems with his shoulder. And he's on a special workout regime to strengthen the shoulder muscles because it relieves the pain. They're trying to avoid surgery, but it's still an issue. But you can tell Jude has been working out with weights a lot because he looks a lot more muscular. But I thought he had a really, really good match, gave 100% as always. He scored a goal, could have scored another one. By the way, he was fouled constantly. He was fouled every time he touched the ball, and I can't believe that Real Sociedad didn't get more yellows because, especially towards the end of the match, you noticed it. Every time Jude touched the ball, he got fouled. But he gave 110%. By the end of the match, he couldn't walk. But I think Jude was fantastic. I think he had a good performance, despite the team play being poor. Okay, Rodrigo it was not his night. He tried everything, but nothing was working. The one-on-ones, the dribbling wasn't working. The one thing I'll give credit to Rodrigo for is that in the last few matches, I've noticed this, maybe you guys have as well, he's defending a lot more. He's doing a lot more backtracking. Sometimes you'll see him deflect a ball or defend a ball or steal a ball really deep in our own end. He's making a big effort defensively, and I think it's something that is very much appreciated defensively. Although I say, maybe it's subtracting from his threat going forward. But I just think last night he didn't have a particularly good night. Great player, but it wasn't his night. Okay, Enrique, I think Enrique played really well, and I want to see this kid play more. And I'm really pissed off because Ancelotti, his rotations are terrible. He waits way too long. He seems to make the wrong substitutions in my mind. Enrique is a player that I think needs more minutes. He had a wonderful goal. The finishing in that goal was fantastic. If you notice, the first touch with the right foot positions the ball away from the defender that was just behind him on the right. And then the finish was with the left, which was a beautiful scoop of the ball. I thought the finish was absolutely first rate, and I think he put a lot of energy into our attack and played a pretty good match, and he ran a lot. So Enrique, I think, was good. I want to see more of him. Okay, Vini was interesting because he went, I think, from bad to pretty good. I think the first half was very poor. Nothing was working. None of his dribbles were working. He couldn't get past anyone. It was really, really frustrating. Of course, the pass of the first goal was incredible, and we have to give him credit. That's one of the nicest passes you'll see. It was absolutely perfectly weighted. His vision was amazing. The pass was incredible. But otherwise, his first half was pretty crappy. As the game went on, he kind of kicked into gear, and he started to take players on more often, kind of, that over and over insistence that Vini has. Towards the end of the game, I think it was a really good performance. And what impressed me a lot was his physical conditioning, because by the end of the match, everybody was dead, except the players that had come on as substitutes. Everybody was dead, but Vini, of all the players that started from the first minute, Vini was the one that had the most energy. He was so dynamic, and towards the end, you had the feeling that the only person that could really create something was Vini. So I think Vini went from sort of poor to pretty impressive towards the end of the match. And by the way, he was also fouled constantly. I don't know how Real Sociedad didn't get more yellow cards. This was absolutely, he got fouled absolutely all match long. And one thing I noticed about Vini, maybe you guys did too, is there were a lot of switches of play. I hadn't seen Vini do this very often, but his side of the pitch tends to get very clogged because defenders focus on him so much. But there were a few lateral switches of play. He did about 4 or 5 of them last night. That it's not something I had seen him do very often before. So I think he must have been instructed to do so. But they were very good switches of play that kind of helped oxygenate our play. So I noticed that about Vini. Okay, Ancelotti, I just want to say I'm very irritated with his substitutions. You could tell Rodrigo, by the end of the match, Rodrigo was fried. He was fried. And, especially live, you can see how tired the players are. And it took so long for him to take him off. That switch could have been easily 15 minutes earlier, at least. But Ancelotti takes so long to make changes. We were joking about it. It's not just my opinion. All the people around where I sit, we were all saying the same thing. What is wrong with this guy? He hates substitutions. I don't know why. Okay, now let me just quickly say the refs. The foul on Vini in the extra time was a red card. And I don't know why. Real Madrid players, you can do anything to them. And what does it take to elicit a red card from our opponents? That was an absolutely brutal tackle, incredibly high. Could have easily taken his knee out. And I don't know why the ref didn't pull out a red card. It was about as obvious as a red card can get. And there was a penalty on Jude that was very obvious. The goalkeeper comes out. He doesn't touch the ball. The ball's gone past, and he smacks Jude in the face and nearly gives him a concussion. Like, how is that not a penalty? I mean, just because he's a goalkeeper, you can't go around punching people. This was a penalty, very clearly. But again, the kind of things we're used to at this point. So look, in terms of conclusions, it's hard not to be pessimistic because we play really, really shitty football at the moment. And what keeps us alive is that we have amazing players and a big pair of balls. That's what's keeping us going. But our collective play is very, very poor, and it really, really worries me. I think we've had a lot of, maybe you can sort of excuse some of it away because we had a lot of chaotic lineup changes due to all the injuries. We got players playing out of position. So all of this is true. But even so, I think with the quality of players we have, we need to be playing much, much better football because our collective play is just terrible. Okay, tonight we've got Barca and Atleti, and we'll see who we meet in the final. That's going to be a really exciting match. Whenever those two play, it's always high scoring. If you look over the decades, every time these two play, it's really, really high scoring. So should be a really good match. But anyway, those are my thoughts awaiting really big matches coming up. But thanks for joining me. As always, let me know what you think in the comment section. And as always and forever, a la Madrid.